Glasgow and the River Clyde. You can see how the Clyde flows right through Glasgow and divides it in two. This is the south side here, and over there is the north side. We usually think of ships and trade when we look at Glasgow and the Clyde nowadays, but that's not how people saw it long ago. In early times, Glasgow was mainly a crossing place over the Clyde. In fact, that's what first made it important. In these days, the River Clyde was a barrier, a frontier that travellers had to cross if they wanted to travel up or down the Western Highlands. And that's what today's programme is about, crossing the Clyde. All right, now could you come a little closer, please? That's the idea. That's fine. Right, now you all know the idea. So what we want now are volunteers. So can we have hands up, the volunteers? Oh, that's great. Now put your hands right up. All right then. We'll have you and you, and you and you, and you and you, and you and you. Okay, can you just go off now? That's the idea. Now the rest of you, we're going to have something else for you to do in a little while. So in the meantime, I think we'll just go back to the classroom. Okay? All right, volunteers. We'll take the first pair. We'll have you two first. Can you tell me your name? Rona.
Samia.
Rona and Samia. Right, Rona and Samia. Now you have to find your way across the river, across the Clyde, but you've not to use a bridge, and you have to get to the other side. All right? Right, we'll try a second pair. Who are you?
Kathleen.
Kathleen?
Anne.
Anne. Kathleen and Anne. Now you have to get across the river as well, but you can use a bridge. But you mustn't use a bridge that people can walk across. This bridge can only take motor cars, no pedestrians. All right? Good. Right, the next pair. Who have we got here?
Indy.
Indy and
Ian.
Ian. So Indy and Ian. Now you have to go across the river as well. You can use a bridge, but your bridge mustn't have any traffic on it. This bridge hasn't to be used by any motor cars, railway trains, no vehicles at all. Just people. Quite clear? Good. Right, last pair. Who's this?
Stuart.
Stuart.
Gary.
And Gary. Stuart and Gary. Now you have to get across the river as well, but you haven't to use a bridge, or an aeroplane, or a boat. Nothing, in fact, and you've still to get to the other side. All right? That's a difficult one. Okay, you all know what you're going to do. Well, there's just two more rules. First of all, you must cross within the city boundary of Glasgow. And secondly, no two pairs can use the same way of getting across the river. All right? So that's you must cross within the city boundary, and you mustn't use a method that any of the other people are using. Well, you have to get started, so off you go. At one time, the Clyde was a quiet little fishing river that flowed between green fields. And at this point, it was so shallow that people could cross it on foot or on horseback. And it was called a ford or shallows. A cathedral was founded on a hillside above the shallows, and over the centuries people came to live nearby. This cathedral still survives, and its founder, St Mungo, is the patron saint of Glasgow. The first stone bridge was built at the Stockwell Shallows by the cathedral authorities, but it was a toll bridge, and many travellers preferred to cross in the old way. By this time, the volunteers had got round to the idea of using the school library to work out their plan of campaign, with the help of maps and reference books.
Counting Place. Clyde. The Glasgow Bridge. King George V. And can I go a bus down to there? Where is it, Clyde? Right past it.
There are lots of bridges over the Clyde at Glasgow, of course, but most of them were out of bounds to us.
Let's try and find the ferries. There's what is here? Ferries, the Clyde.
You'll remember that Rona and Samia had to cross the river without using a bridge. Well, they decided to cross by ferry. Only two ferries still cross near here, and they chose this one. At one time, there were actually 14 ferries across the Clyde in Glasgow, but most people now travel to work by bus or car over one of the bridges. the ferry girls?
Yes.
It's a good way of getting across, isn't it?
Yes.
Seems great. Yes. I'm looking forward to this trip. I haven't been in a boat for ages. I think the skipper's coming now. Well, I wonder how long it takes to get across. Can you tell us how long it takes to get across?
Oh, roughly about 3 minutes.
Is that all?
Aye, that's about
How much
all.
does that cost us?
Oh, it's free.
Free?
Aye, no charge.
That's very good. 3-minute journey, free. Great. Ferries are one of the oldest ways of crossing a river, because it's usually cheaper and easier to run a small boat than to build a large bridge. Have you done this before?
Yes.
You've been over before, have you?
Yes.
On this same ferry? Ah, so you knew it was free? Ah, I didn't know it was free. I think that's marvellous. There's a nice big boat here, look. Tremendous, isn't it? It's a lot bigger than the one we're on, anyway. You don't recognise the flag, do you? I think it's from Panama. Yes, that's the Panama flag. Ah, it's a lovely boat. Well, I've not been on this bit of the river at all before. I see all the docks and cranes down there as well. Ooh, it's certainly chilly. I think is this where we go in? Over here, is it?
Yes.
Did you have much trouble finding it, the ferry? Oh, you knew about it already, didn't you? Yes, I thought you knew about it already. Oh dear. Another good thing about ferries, they don't block the river to traffic as bridges often do. Hold on, I think it's going to bump. There we are. Journey's end. Well, the next pair were allowed to use a bridge, but only one that's forbidden to traffic. Let's see how Ian and Indy made out. The riverbank has been greatly improved in places, and now there's space again to sit, or walk, or jog. This suspension bridge was built more than 100 years ago, and it was meant to be a toll bridge. The price to cross was 1/2 penny. You can see how the great suspension cables support the main weight of the bridge. I think by this time Ian and Indy were too puffed to notice. Gary and Stuart are off to find a way across the river without either using a bridge or a boat. Now, one of the ways they might come up with is this, a tunnel. This is the Anderston tunnel, one of the oldest tunnels in the Clyde, and at one time horses and carts could cross here, but nowadays it's only open for pedestrians. But there are, of course, other tunnels. The main tunnel under the Clyde was built in 1963. Its main job, of course, was to take traffic away from the crowded bridges in the city centre, but part of the tunnel was reserved for pedestrians.
This tunnel was opened in 1963, was it? No, on the 3rd of July, I think it was, wasn't it? Aye, but Queen Elizabeth.
It didn't take Stuart and Gary long to decide how to get across the river without using a bridge or a boat. The heavy traffic causes problems of ventilation, so there are 4 big air intakes that suck in fresh air from outside so that it can be circulated inside the tunnel by fans. In fact, the Clyde Tunnel is no ordinary tunnel below a river. Hello, boys. Come on in. Now, this is Mr. Barry, who's in charge of the control room here, Gary and Stuart. Oh. And earlier we were talking together, and we were wondering what happened if a car broke down actually in the tunnel.
Yes, well, I have a direct line to the patrol.
So there's a patrol ready to go in and help anyone who has an accident?
That's correct.
And how do you hear about this?
Well, I either hear on the telephone or I can see on the monitors.
Oh, I see. So we've got closed circuit television actually in the tunnels.
That's correct.
So you're going to be able to see what's going on the whole time.
Yes.
And we can also see out the windows here, I see behind you, the cars actually entering the tunnel.
Yes.
So I really feel quite safe now to go through, don't I? Obviously, yes. That's great. Do you mind if we have a look round in the control room?
No, carry on.
Fine, thanks very much. What exactly are we looking at here, Mr. Barry?
This is a camera for the other end of the tunnel. If it's been a wide area, the camera moves about.
Oh, that's marvellous. The main thing nowadays is to keep the traffic flowing at all costs, and that's what the tunnel is designed for. There is another way under the river, but it's out of action at the moment. The underground. This is coach number 39, one of the original of the 43 coaches that used to run on the old subway. Now, these coaches in their time must each have run about 7.5 million miles. None of them are going to be used in the new subway, but if you feel nostalgic and you would like to see one of them again, one is going to be kept in the Glasgow Transport Museum. It's going to be set up in a mock-up of one of the old stations.
You've got about a flat there. I thought we were the only ones that was lost.
And here's one of the new coaches being tested. Okay. That's the thing. Good. Well, this looks a lot bigger than the old coach, doesn't it? And yet, I happen to know it's exactly the same size. I suppose it's all this white paint and on the glass that makes it look bigger, eh? Very smart.
Well, hello, this is the cab of one of the new Glasgow units. As you can see, the driver has a fairly simple instrument panel in front of him. He's got these three dials. One tells him the amount of air he's got, the other how fast the car's going, and the other whether the brakes are on or not. When he wants to start the train, he comes on, turns that key, has to hold this dead man's handle down, and moves this handle into either forward or reverse. If it's in the forward position, when he's ready to go, he then pushes it up. The first thing it does is take off the brakes, which you just heard, and then he can push it through these speed controls here. He's got three speeds that he can go. He can go very slowly, that's the shunt position, or fairly slowly in the series, or in parallel he's going at full speed. That will be the top speed of the train, about 55 kilometres per hour. When he wants to stop the train, he just brings this back, and that applies a little bit of brake there, all the way back, and it applies more brake, depending on how much he wants. Off again if he needs it. If the driver's taken ill at all when he's on the train, there's a safety mechanism in that if he releases this dead hand, the brakes come on immediately and he has to reset it, as I just did then.
Well, the engineer was kind enough to let Gary and Stuart sit in the driver's seat to see what it feels like to drive the train. As well as the new coaches, all the stations are going to be modernised, and of course the track. But the route will remain the same. It would be too costly to alter the tunnels. Well, so far we've crossed the river by ferry, by pedestrian bridge, and we've actually gone under the river. Now that leaves only one way to go, by a bridge that's forbidden to people on foot. Now I know of at least one bridge that fits that description, but there is a snag. Unfortunately, it's not on the route of any local bus. So I'm really wondering how Anne and Kathleen are going to manage. Well, if you must travel, I suppose you're better to do it in style, especially with somebody else to do all the work. The main bridge for traffic crossing the river is this one, the Kingston Bridge. It was designed to link up with the inner ring road and the M8 motorway. To help traffic move quickly, new approach roads had to be built, something they didn't have to bother about with the old bridges. Purely by chance, I happened to be standing on top of a multi-storey office block when I saw this. There was something rather familiar about it. Yes, it was crossing the Kingston Bridge all right, but I couldn't quite see inside from up there. In fact, it was carrying two contestants for the Brain of Anderston Primary School 1978.
Do you know when it was opened? Yes, it was opened in 1969 by the Queen Mother. Do you know how many cars go over the bridge a day?
Around about 110,000 cars.
That's a lot.
How long do you think the bridge is?
Well, the bridge itself is 880 feet long.
You've been doing your homework?
I should hope so too. Maybe I should add that the Kingston Bridge is by far the highest bridge in Glasgow, because it's the furthest downstream. I suppose they could have built another tunnel here instead, but only a mighty big one would have carried the same amount of traffic. I wonder where they got the car. I suppose I better not ask. Hello, girls.
Hello.
Did you enjoy that?
Yes.
You found out lots about the bridge, did you?
Yes.
It's a very big bridge, isn't it? I wonder why that is.
To let the boats go under.
Oh, boats go underneath that bridge, do they? Yes, I see. Good, that's fine. Well, I think you better get back to your classrooms now, all right? So I'll see you again. Bye-bye.
Here's something for you.
Oh, thanks very much. What's this? Something about the bridge, is it? A bill for the car. I might have known, just my luck. Great. I must remember not to come here too often. Well, we'll leave the school behind us now, and all these different ways of crossing the Clyde. Each one, the ferry, the tunnel, the different bridges, was a different way of solving the problem of how to cross a river, and each solution had its own advantages and its own drawbacks. Next week, I'm going further downriver to see what happens when the Clyde meets the sea, at the Seaway.